All right, and Matt, you've actually done it. You got in the door somehow. I mean, so how did you take that first step?
It's kind of I think Samsung and what they're trying to do with their next-gen device range really kind of appeals to our service, because we're a kind of media platform, and as devices improve, better cameras, better processors, better hardware, we can leverage these devices. And I think what we were trying to propose to Samsung was that you're in the TV space, the tablet space, the mobile space with your hardware, and you're doing some exciting stuff on the Galaxy platform. We can leverage all of this, but in a completely different way. So if you look at a company like first generation YouTube, Facebook, they really concentrate on the same service, but using different size devices. So you may use, obviously with places and location, it's changing things, but with us, we are going to provide a completely different experience from the TV to the tablet to the mobile.
So there was a good strategic fit, but how did you even get at a table with Samsung to tell them that story?
Well, kind of, it's as simple really as kind of attending developer events at the beginning. And just connecting with people and having that passion and persistence and believing in what you're trying to do and just engaging the corporate, really. And then once you do that, it's kind of difficult because you've got to roadmap your way through and find the right people in the right territories. I mean, we're a very small startup, and time zones are an issue. Yeah. We've got LA, San Francisco, Korea, and London to navigate, and we're having meetings in different parts of the world. So it can be tricky from that point of view. But I think it comes down to being able to partner together and kind of grow together. So if you become a partner of Samsung and understand their roadmap, where they're heading, if you kind of fit with that from the point of view of providing content and services, then there's a pretty good mix. But you've got to get that point across and get yourself in front of the right people. Yeah.
So for you, it was really developer events.
Yeah, at the beginning, and it kind of moved from there. I mean, Samsung do offer human contact all the way through the process, as opposed to building applications on kind of the iPhone App Store, where you're kind of left to just distribute and navigate your way. I mean, it's quite interesting with Android, particularly, how they're kind of approaching that and the kind of attention to detail with suppliers and publishers. So, yeah, it's.
Don, Stephen, where do folks find you? Are you at these developer events? Are you at more broad industry events?
Yeah, so I would say a lot of folks find me through VC contacts. I meet fairly regularly with different venture groups, and share ideas about where we're going and who we should be working with. So folks come in that way. Through referrals of other companies we're working with. So we have a pretty good network of entrepreneurs that we work with, and they move on to other companies and bring in their new company to us. So that happens. Developer events is another one. And then we have certain periods of the year where we go out seeking for companies, and we bring in maybe about 10 to 12 companies every 6 months, where we proactively find them and then try to bring them through, find a champion, and get a deal signed with them. So
in a more structured way, is it? And how do you find out about those time periods?
You really can. I mean, I guess you could reach out to somebody like myself or to Stephen, and then we'll look for the right opportunity to bring a company in front of potential champion within the company or executives within Samsung, and try to get things going on a fast track.
Okay, so bottom line, you've got to get in the door. You have to find your champion, and hopefully there will be a strategic fit. Otherwise, things are not going to progress. So now you're starting to do business, hopefully. John, what are the pitfalls in that very early stage of the dance, where you're kind of trying to figure out even what is the business we're going to do together? Where do things go wrong? Where does the puppy get squeezed?
Well, in the initial stages, there often will be an NDA signed, and that first agreement sets the tone for many of the rights. And most of these transactions are driven by information and access to information. So there are ways that the entrepreneur can structure the scope of what's considered to be confidential in a manner that protects both parties' interests, and of course every document is heavily negotiated. But in most cases it's a matter of explaining to the CVC or the business unit what your concerns are. And for example, if you're concerned that as a startup in this space, if you have customers that are competitors to Samsung, then perhaps you don't want to create concern for your customers because you're working with Samsung. So there are ways to structure the information rights so that there are carve-outs. And in my experience, it's the entrepreneurs and companies that are upfront initially with the corporate partners in explaining their concerns and that manage the relationship by managing expectations, but also being early in the process to disclose concerns that you have. And so that would be one example, information rights.
Okay. Ross, can you tell us a bit about your experience with Samsung, just what kind of drove the relationship there? You're essentially an alternative to BlackBerry for push email. You kind of bring push email to more mobile platforms.
That's certainly what we were known for at the beginning of this, yeah. I mean, perhaps we had an advantage, or maybe it was just because we were an old startup. But by that time, we had 130 carrier customers around the world, many of the top 10, and so we were running on a lot of Samsung phones, and they had a way to know exactly what we did. The point where it becomes interesting is you almost have to think about how they were approaching the world. And at that point, there had been kind of a sea change which occurred, which was the iPhone. And BlackBerry set a model where it wasn't just the hardware, it was the service and the software. But everybody sort of thought, oh, that's just an anomaly. But when Apple came along and just exploded, and when they captured over 50% of the gross margin in this industry, everybody wanted to figure out how they responded. So it created a point where there was a gap in the product lines of the major pure hardware suppliers. And the discussion centers around, can I fill that gap? What the other competitors are doing. You need to be very honest with yourself about what you do well and what you don't do well. And really understand that the size of a Samsung is going to look at every possible competitor, and so you better know what your story is and how you position with those.
And can I add something to that point? So when companies come to approach me and they want to work with Samsung, oftentimes they come to it from a very company-specific point of view. I want to be on you because you're distributed across, X million handsets across the world. I want to work with you because you're a large customer, large market opportunity for me. And oftentimes, especially on the application and services side, they tend to forget what the business and value proposition is for Samsung itself. And so, once again, it comes down to, do your research when you talk to a potential corporate partner. Understand exactly not only your value their value for you, but really what value that you bring to them that can't be differentiated from the other guys out there.
Yeah, I can't emphasize that too much. You have to think in their shoes. You have to see it from their viewpoint. And ultimately, how you view the world really doesn't matter. It's how they view the world.
So one question that comes up is, do you take money from your partner to kind of seal the deal? Is that a quid pro quo for having a partnership, that you need to let them take a stake in you, or is it kind of the cherry on top?
Well, it depends on what you're trying to get. In some cases, you need to not burden things too much if you're benefiting from the relationship in other ways. So, for example, we can provide a lot of companies, significant distribution because we ship, 200 million plus phones a year. And if you're interested in that distribution, you don't want to burden the model too much with a heavy per-device royalty, because then what will happen is we'll only put it on a few devices. So I see often where companies don't structure or come up with a proposal that doesn't make sense for the ultimate benefit that they want to get out of the company, and they don't understand that from our point of view, the demand is elastic. So if you charge a high price, we will use it in fewer places, and you might actually end up getting less than if you charged a lower price.
So in that area, does that mean it would make more sense to not have a business arrangement, but actually have an investment arrangement?
I think it makes sense to have a business arrangement. It makes sense to have the large company have some skin in the game, but you want to make sure that you structure it appropriately. You don't want to have something that misaligns incentives.
I mean, maybe just a couple things there. I mean, big companies vary from one end to the other in terms of how much they're willing to put in a big chunk up front. Some are willing to invest millions of dollars. Samsung is at the other extreme. Their view is you need to earn your position inside the company, that they're not going to invest something up front. If you execute and you deliver a product which really makes sense to them, it'll generate a lot of money because they'll put it on an awful lot of devices.
John, are there best practices in terms of how to structure a corporate investment so that what the scenario Ross is talking about actually happens?
Yes, and I think Dom was alluding to this. The benefits should be sequenced correctly so that, let's say it's this royalty arrangement, there'll be revenue thresholds or other contingencies so that if one party is not receiving the benefit, then the royalty or the terms will be conditioned on those requirements. And in that way, parties have the correct incentives throughout their entire relationship.
Matt, for a startup in your stage, what is most crucial to you? What do you really want to get out of a corporate partner?
Well, we like the idea of partnering with Samsung in terms of defining a roadmap. And really, it's about a mutual win from our point of view. We want distribution, but we want the right distribution. There are certain territories and countries that we would not be comfortable distributing in right now. So it's got to be right in that respect. Obviously, it's a win-win situation, and I go back to Android in the sense that it is a crowded space. And with Samsung and their Galaxy range, we identified that these two products were perfect for us, for our service, and that we wanted to really leverage these devices. So for us, it's quality in the early stage, not quantity. We want to scale sensibly and provide a good service from the beginning, which will then obviously give us more credibility within the corporate. So yeah, less to worry about an early stage, more focus, and to scale in a controlled manner. So I would say that's.
Stephen, from your perspective, is it better to have an investment where there is a business relationship as well, or is it cleaner if there's not a deep business relationship?
I would say it's always better to have a business relationship. If you, just from an external point of view, from the outside world looking in, if Samsung is an investor, you automatically assume that there is a business relationship. And the most harming thing for the company itself is if we were one of their larger investors and they didn't have a working business relationship with them, that would signal to other potential customers, other potential partners that, perhaps even while they have an investment, they still weren't able to execute or aren't good enough for an insider in the company. And so, when we look at companies, a lot of times we cannot guarantee a business relationship, but what we do is we will make the appropriate introductions so that you can go ahead and close on a business relationship. At the end of the day, the end goal for everybody is that something does crystallize. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen all the time.
Yeah, it seems like there's a big kind of almost PR risk when you align yourself with a big company. There are, you know, as much as there's opportunity, there's also downside.